if you wanted some American politics stuff, well, here you go. Here in the U.S., this is probably the number one conversation. It's been the number one conversation for like a minute now, to be quite honest. It's probably going to continue to be the number one topic for a while. So Trump is obviously not trying to release the files, but the topic is not going away. His opposition is not going to let that go away. And there's a fascinating thing playing out where Trump is just trying to ignore and move on. But a lot, like I said, the opposition here have something. There's clearly something. There's clearly something going on. This might be the one thing that could possibly sink him. The problem is this the way I see it is his opposition willing to burn their own side down as well? Because inevitably that's pretty much why we didn't get any information about this topic for the last, how long has it been? For years now. That's pretty much the assumption that every American has had, is that we didn't get any information about it because it's concerning both sides. I mean, we literally have evidence. It doesn't really matter, left or right, what side of the political aisle you're on. It's more of a class thing of just really rich people doing some weird stuff. And it's very interesting to see how this is going to play out. I'm watching it very closely. Like I said, clearly Trump is just doing everything he can to move on. And that could be for a couple of reasons, honestly. I know the obvious thing is people are assuming that it's going to directly implement him. It could be so much bigger than just that. First of all, that would be pretty big. I don't know if it gets bigger than that, but it could include him as well as a lot of others in the circle, both left and right. But there's a couple of things that could be happening. I mean, he has directly said that he's trying to protect, rich people from, he's trying to protect certain interests, maybe that he's close with. Maybe he's trying to, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily have to directly be him, but it could be someone he's very close with that could also make him look really bad. So let me give you an example. Like 10 or 15 years ago, there was this really famous head coach for the Penn State Nittany Lions. He was this icon. He's like this football head coach. He'd been around for decades, and basically the mascot for this college football team had become the coach just because he was there forever. He was he won so much for them. And then they find out that his like closely tied defensive coordinator, Sandusky, what's his name? Jerry Sandusky or something like that, had been a PDF file this whole time. And there was a lot of evidence that that Joe Paterno knew about that and knew about it the whole time. And it completely destroyed his legacy. I think Penn State, in a way, is still somewhat recovering, and they're going to take another 10 years to recover because that was their whole identity. It was all around this coach, and to see it get that tarnished basically overnight was detrimental. I mean, I think maybe now they're getting over it, but it took at least 10 years. And it might take another 10 more to get fully. So basically, my point of this story is that obviously this head coach didn't do it himself, but just because he was closely associated, this was his like number one defensive coordinator for a couple decades there, if I remember correctly. It was over for him. It was over. They took down the statues. They removed everything that they had from him, both the fan base and the school. It was over. I don't know what the proof is if he knew directly, but just the association. That could be the same thing that Trump is seeing. That would sink, I think, his presidency. It's easy for me to say that because there's been so many things that have come up in Trump's past, in the first term and now, where people say, oh, this could sink the Trump stuff. The big one being like the Russia stuff. In the first term, I'll be honest with you, at the time, I knew that was kind of BS. I mean, now we can all confidently say it, but it really seemed like just a media hook the media was holding on to that as best they could to get people to just drive viewership, and they were just trying to. Yeah, they were just trying to stay alive. And it's funny that I'm making this conversation now because it really feels like the traditional media, the old school media is on their last leg or dead or dying. I don't really know. But yeah, when it came to like the first term, the thing they thought they were going to get Trump for, the Russia stuff, it landed with a segment of the population, but they just didn't have anything. There was no evidence. Here feels really different. Just in my personal opinion, this feels really different because I don't think there's any coming back from this. Even his most strongest supporters, if he visited the island, if he did things, yeah. But there was also a lot of... here's the thing. You never know, because if there's any inkling of some sort of tampering that's going on, if it doesn't feel real, if there's any inkling that, whatever the Democratic Party or the Democratic forces just put his name in or something like that, then his base obviously won't remove him, whether he did it or not. Like, it's all just a game on if he can actively prove that this is not true or whatever. So I'm not 100%, but it really is an interesting spot to be watching right now. Because like I said in the very beginning, it's like, are the opposition forces to Trump willing to lose some pretty big figures on their side too? There's got to be, like, let's say Bill Gates, for instance. There's two Bills, actually. There's Bill Clinton, Bill Gates. There's a lot. When you Google Epstein right now, it's kind of funny. You're only seeing pictures of Trump. But there was a lot more people that were associated with this guy than just Trump. The Australian Prime Minister's daughter, did I read that correctly? Not 100% about that. This was obviously like 10 years ago. But really weird footage of, I can't back this data up. I just saw a video with him with a really young girl, and it was supposed to be... I think some Australian leadership's daughter. Like, holy crap. It's just everything. And then, he got the UK, what's that guy's name? Prince, King, whatever his name is. They got that UK guy. He got that guy really good. Who knows who else? I guess that's why this is such an international, it is surprising to me a little bit that the world seems to be focusing on this subject, not just America. But then I forget, that's right, because he did get so much of the world involved, Australia and the UK, and who knows, there's probably a lot more than that. But it's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger. I also don't love the comparisons to Diddy. Bro, this is way bigger than Diddy. Diddy is a cultural icon. And he had a lot of power in the music industry, but it wasn't getting much big. We're not talking about massive world governments and the most powerful people alive. They were definitely powerful people, the people that Diddy was messing with. But we're not talking about like heads of state or, rich people, mega rich people like Bill Gates. So anyways, I'm just very curious how close the opposition is going to be willing to fly to this, how much they're willing to be Icarus here. How will they fly too close to the sun and burn their own side down? Because they very easily could get caught in the crossfire. And I think there's a lot of people just in the American public that don't really care on both sides, no matter who gets destroyed from this. I think the American public, both the left and the right, are like, even if it hurts my side, they want the information. I think that's happening with a lot of people. I think even, because obviously the left isn't as in power as the right is in the current makeup of our government. But I think there's a lot of people on the left that are willing to be like, whatever. I actually think they have no problem with that. Like, okay, yeah, there's some rich people that our side was dealing with. Screw them too. If we could take down Trump, if we could take down all these, corrupt, evil people, let's do it. So it's a fascinating conversation that is being had, and it's interesting because for the first time we can now talk about this kind of on YouTube. I don't know if this video is going to get demonetized. I think it's not. It's such a huge topic. I feel like when things really changed when like Netflix dropped a documentary, and then I think like 60 Minutes did something about Epstein. And this was back in the day when this was maybe 6 months after he quote unquote offed himself. Once those media sources started dropping stuff about him, I was like, okay, you could probably maybe talk about him. Now, obviously, YouTube plays favoritism. TikTok plays favoritism. But, so like if you have a certain account that's more establishment media, they're definitely going to let you fly with a lot more than they will me. But I think there's a more openness because it's such a huge conversation to let most accounts talk about it. Now, if you're a little bit controversial, which maybe I am, I mean, I think in the eyes of YouTube, I am seen as somewhat of a controversial figure because I joke about possibly sensitive topics, entire countries, geography, history. History is very, I could see how the algorithm maybe thinks I could, so they might not let me, but we'll give it a shot. I did want to talk about this topic because it's big, and it's like, I think it's weird when you're not talking about it, to be quite honest. There's a lot of people that aren't talking about it, and I've been following, U.S. politics for a very long time. I will go over one day what my whole origin story with it when it comes to my interests in politics and history and things like that. But I feel like this is unlike anything. To be quite honest, there's probably more out there than just Epstein. This is just one example of it, but there's probably more. I mean, Dan, the Epstein stuff came out, and then they caught Diddy doing a kind of a very similar thing, a little bit of a different story. They kind of were flying at different. They're flying at different rates and tones and doing different things, but it kind of similar. How many more are doing this around the world, around the industry? To be honest, what are the chances that we caught the biggest guy doing it? I doubt it. We caught one. There's probably bigger. And maybe that's another rabbit hole that we're not trying, because if you get the names, if you get the files with all these guys that were on Epstein's island or messing with Epstein, well, follow their names. What else are these guys doing? Are there other islands that they're going to too? Is it just this one island? Or do they hit up Epstein for a certain thing, and then they got another guy for another thing that they like, and then they just... Bro, I mean, that's another thing that maybe they don't want the files to come out. So it's just unfortunate because the Trump administration, before they got elected, they teased this a lot. And, I mean, it's not coming out. And it's like, I think the American public would like to see this information come out. Regardless if you hate Trump or love Trump, people wanted the files, and they didn't come out. And he's probably just not going to do it. He's probably going to hope this whole thing blows over, and it probably won't. So this is really, the ball is in the court of his opposition. The ball is in the court of anyone that doesn't like Trump. What do they do? How do they respond? Can they force his hand to do more, to talk more, to release more, to do something? Because there's crazy media articles all over the place. The mainstream media is really flying with this one, and I just don't think it's going to go away. He wants it to go away. The media, newspapers, political figures, anyone, they don't want it to go away. So we'll see what happens. This could end up being the biggest controversy we've seen in this entire century. Maybe longer than that, to be quite honest, if it gets big enough, and it sounds like it is.